every country it seems, without exception, they have memorials and statues to blow your mind. But the Caribbean man, I just don't understand. We don't have anything of that kind. We have a lot of history and plenty famous names, but like we don't want to talk about it. West Indians know about Daniel Boone and Jesse James. It's time we start blowing we own trumpet. So I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Walcott and Kitchi. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. In the foreign countries, it's abundantly clear. You will see mementos from the past. They have postcards and plaques. They have statues everywhere, whether Leningrad, Rome, or Belfast. Mickey Mantle's name is enshrined in Yankee Stadium, 'cause he was really good with a baseball bat. An Olympic gold medal, Casey Crawford won. Most of we already don't forget that. So I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Warren and Vivi. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. Guyana should be proud of a fella named Lance. They know his name in Australia and England. And every Barbadian should be given the chance to know Garfield Sobers was number one. And every Trinidadian should know of Constantine, Roger Gibbon and Sonny Ramadin. And the whole Caribbean should remember Valentine, the cricketer who helped West Indies to win. So I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Walcott and Birdie. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. And if you go to Moscow, and one day you'll learn there's a building where all their heroes remain. And don't talk about London, every step, every turn. is a page of English history retained. Lincoln died a long time ago in history, but he is known and revered by every Yankee. The great Eric Williams just died the other day. Look, we don't forget the man already. Man, I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Minshall and Sonny. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. Yes, I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets. Where are the replicas of famous figures, men like Quarry and Clive?
Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Pleasant, very pleasant Friday night, Friday evening to you all. Welcome to Politics 101. Please share the link, share the link, share the link. One of our young heroines is going to be on tonight with us. Amanza Walton-Desir is here. She hasn't been here for a while. Used to be a regular on this program in the early days. She's going to be on tonight. So please share the link. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? One of my favorite trade wind song, Dave Martin's and the trade winds. Dave Martin's, of course, our own hero, musical hero, creative genius. He's still in our midst. Getting on, almost 90, but he's still there, batting. We all, of course, know not a blade of grass, but he has really written and sung some of our classics. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Speaking to our short memories in the Caribbean. And I played that song specifically tonight, the night, the day, the morning, however you put it, after that meeting in St. Vincent, hosted by CARICOM and the Latin American country, CELAC, between our president, Irfan Ali, and Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president. You all know where I stand on that meeting. I think it was premature, and I continue to feel so. I also think that the CARICOM leaders have let Guyana down. They've let Guyana down in leading Guyana into that meeting to cover their own skin. We in the WPF call them hustlers, hustling a little aid from Venezuela, and feel a sense of gratitude to Venezuela, and are prepared to throw Guyana under the bus. In order to protect the little aid coming from Venezuela. I don't mind Venezuela helping Caribbean countries. I don't grudge Caribbean countries for seeking economic help. But when you are going to throw your sister under the bus in order to protect the little aid that you're getting, something is wrong there. Something is wrong. It is not our Caribbean. It is not our Caribbean. It is not in the spirit of Caribbean integration. There is no dispute. There is absolutely no dispute over Essequibo. Essequibo is not in dispute. And to see that word in the declaration yesterday, And our Caribbean leaders sat down there and agreed to put that word in there, that there's a dispute between Venezuela and Guyana, and that Venezuela and Guyana should de-escalate tensions. Venezuela should de-escalate and not Guyana. But our sister Caribbean countries are trying to be politically correct, and in the process, protecting their own skins while throwing Guyana under the bus. One has to say things sometimes that are not pleasant. As you all know, I'm a Caribbean person. I'm a Caribbean man. I cannot be anything else. Those of you who've been watching this program know that I am very much Caribbean. I continue to believe that Guyana must be very much part of CARICOM. Despite our failings as a region, that we must continue to be part of CARICOM. I have advocated on this program that our oiled windfall should be shared with our Caribbean brothers and sisters. Shared, that we should think about eradicating poverty, not just in Guyana, but in the entire CARICOM region. I am a Caribbean person, and I will continue to be a Caribbean person. But when our Caribbean leaders are throwing Guyana under the bus, then we have to say so. I grew up admiring Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. He is part of a rich tradition of Caribbean progressive politics. I continue to believe that he's one of the few voices from the old days of anti-imperialism and Caribbean nationalism. His sense of the Caribbean civilization is second to none. But I disagree with Dr. Ralph. I disagreed with him in 2020 for sticking his nose overly in Guyana's politics. I don't mind a Caribbean leader taking an interest in what's happening in Guyana. I do take an interest in what's happening in St. Vincent and St. Lucia and Barbados and wherever. But what Comrade Ralph did and what Sister Mia did in 2020 was not just take an interest, they took a side in a dispute between two political entities. You're talking about a dispute. There's no dispute over Essequibo, but there was a dispute over the 2020 election. And Comrade Ralph and Sister Mia took sides. They took sides. Again, the hustler mentality. Guyana is going to get some oil and gas, and we're going to get some wealth, and they lined up behind who they thought was the winner. The hustler mentality. It's one thing to seek aid for your country. It's another thing to get into the business of hustling, because when you start to hustle, then what you do is that you lose your sense of principle. And they pressured Irfan Ali into going to that meeting. And poor Irfan kept saying, I am going there not to discuss the border issue. That is non-negotiable. And I think he believed that, but he was naive to believe that he's going to go there not to discuss that issue. As we learned, that is what they wanted him to go there to discuss. But more than discuss, they wanted him to go there so that he can begin a process that will save them from having to take a principled position. I supported Venezuela. When America was breathing down the neck of the Maduro Chavez government, I supported them. From a principled anti-imperialist third worldist position, I supported them. But when Maduro began to ratchet up his aggression against Guyana, I have to break with him. Principled position. And that is what I expected from Ralph Gonzalez and Mia Motley and Brother Rowley and the others. To say thanks, Venezuela. Thanks for helping us when we needed help. But on this matter, you are wrong, you are wrong, you are being a bully. And we cannot support bullies. Instead of taking that principled position, they hauled Irfan Ali to St. Vincent to sit down there and sign the declaration that says his country is part of a dispute over Essequibo. Irfan knows better. But poor brother, overwhelmed. Mia knows better. She's a lawyer. Ralph knows better. He's a lawyer. What dispute? What dispute? CARICOM has failed Guyana. I continue to be a CARICOM man, a Caribbean man. And I urge you all, those of you who are on this program, and those of you who will view this program, and those of you who are Guyanese, to continue to be pro-Caribbean. But this crop of Caribbean leaders, they're wrong. They're wrong. I don't like to make these kinds of comparisons, but it is difficult for me to envisage an Eric Williams or an Errol Barrow or Michael Manley throwing Guyana under the bus for a few barrels of oil. For a few barrels of oil. Good evening to all of you. Welcome. Please share the link. Amanza Walton-Desir is going to be here. I heard from her a few minutes ago, and she's expected to join us. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about that meeting. We're going to be talking about that meeting. We're going to be talking about that meeting.
The link is giving me grief to open up.
Okay. All right. Let me call the link out to you to make sure that you're not misreading some of those letters there.
No, I'm clicking it in the message you sent me. Could you just send it back to me right in the WhatsApp?
Yes.
Because it's showing me link is broken. Yeah, I'm sitting here on the computer ready, waiting to sign on, but the link is problematic. So if you mean to send? Well, I can send it to an email direct if that is easier. Okay. That might probably help. Yes.
Yeah. Give me.
Let me text you the email immediately.
Yes, please do.
All right, great.
All right. Some technical difficulty there, Amanza, but she's ready to come on. We are going to sort that problem out. We're going to sort that problem out in a minute. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. We are going to sort that out, the problem, in a minute. In a minute, we're going to sort that out.
Every country, it seems, without exception, they have memorials and statues to blow your mind. But the Caribbean man, I just don't understand. We don't have anything of that kind. We have a lot of history and plenty famous names, but like we don't want to talk about it. West Indians know about Daniel Boone and Jesse James. It's time we start blowing we own trumpet. So I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Walcott and Kitchi. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. In the foreign countries, it's abundantly clear. You will see mementos from the past. They have postcards and plaques. They have statues everywhere, whether Leningrad, Rome, or Belfast. Mickey Mantle's name is enshrined in Yankee Stadium, 'cause he was really good with a baseball bat. An Olympic gold medal, Casey Crawford won. Most of we already don't forget that. So I'm asking you, where are your heroes, Caribbean? I don't see many statues on your streets, and you have no replicas of famous figures, men like Warren and Vivi. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? Show them to me. Guyana should be proud of a fella named Lance. They know his name in Australia and England. And every Barbadian should be given the chance to know Garfield Sobers was number one.
Oh, yes. Where are your heroes, Caribbean? And let me just finish my editorial there. I was saying that the West Indian leaders, the CARICOM leaders, they have led Guyana down a rabbit hole. They have put Irfan Ali in an untenable situation. They could not have started from a Guyana position. If you start from a Guyana position, there is no dispute. If you start from a Guyana position, then the ICJ would be a clause in the declaration, not the Geneva Agreement. Because the ICJ is about the jurisdiction and is about whether the 1899 agreement is valid. And that's the Guyana case. That was not, is not in the Argyle agreement. Instead, we have the Geneva Agreement in there. They've saved Maduro's skin and they've thrown Guyana under the bus. And the diplomats will tell me all kinds of things. Well, you know, David, oh, well, you know. One cannot well, you know. With almost 3/4 of my country's territory, you don't well, you know with that. And if our CARICOM leaders could not stand up and say, Brother Maduro, Comrade Maduro, you helped us. We are grateful. But on this matter, Guyana is not an aggressor. We cannot call on Guyana to de-escalate tensions. Guyana never escalate any tensions. Our CARICOM brothers and sisters are wrong. They're wrong. And Mia and Ralph and the others, they're hustlers. Hustlers. They're hustling some aid. And when you start to hustle, you then lose principle. Because principle would mean that you stand on the side of justice. And Guyana's case is just. I'm a Caribbean man. I will remain a Caribbean man. After all, that is all we have. And I will not stop telling you all to keep supporting CARICOM. I will urge this government and all other government to share our windfall with our CARICOM brothers and sisters. That we must eradicate poverty in our Guyana, in our Caribbean. But we have to tell Ralph Gonzalez and Mia and company, you all are wrong. You all have traded Guyana's dignity for a few barrels of cheap oil. Shame. Shame on you all. Errol Barrow would not be smiling with Mia Mott. He will be ashamed of the position that she's taking. And Michael Manley and Forbes Burnham and Eric Williams would not be proud of Ralph Gonzalez. Ralph is a tremendous intellect, someone who I look up to, who I grew up looking up to, and I will continue to look up to him. But on this issue, he's wrong. He's been unprincipled. Unprincipled. That's my view. That's my view. And I'm not mincing matters. I don't mince matters when it comes to issues that have to do with our birthright. Our birthright. Anyhow, it's not my night tonight. Tonight is Sister Amanza's night, and I don't want to prejudice what she has to say. We are your heroes, Caribbean. She's one of our younger heroes. People who are coming through the ranks and are making a mark in this hard guava season, are making the mark on our Guyana scene. And I obviously would want to protect an Amanza-Desir from the sickness, the disease that these Caribbean leaders are presenting to us. I know there cannot be an example for people like Amanza Walton-Desir. Mia is doing well for us on the world stage. We have to remember that. It's a breath of fresh air. But on the issue of Guyana, she's unprincipled. She's unprincipled. Unprincipled. Amanza, good evening. You're not responsible for anything said over the last couple of minutes when you were listening or what I said before you come on. I would not want to taint you with my old style patriotism, so-called Caribbean principles, and so on. You all are young people. You all have to make your way. But and so you're not responsible for what I say. What I said last night, I read newspapers as night where I am. 3 hours behind the Caribbean. Kaitro News comes up at midnight Guyana time. Stabrook News comes up at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock my time. At 11, I go straight to the letter section. And your letter commenting on the meeting yesterday was the first letter. So the first thing that I read in the Stabrook News was your letter. And I was struck by it because with little time to digest what happened, you were very quick to put pen to paper and made sense. Please tell our audience that little short letter, the essence of what you put in there.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hinds. Are you hearing me clearly?
Very clearly.
Great. Thank you for having me on your program, and good night to your listening and viewing audience. Look, you were right. It was an initial reaction. And I was able to have that reaction, particularly because of my training. I am a trained drafter, in addition to being an attorney at law. And so language is a key tool of our trade as treaty drafters and as legislative drafters. And so when you look at an agreement, the first thing that you look for is language, because one of the cardinal rules is that when it comes to drafting these types of declarations and arrangements, particularly in situations that are rife with potential conflict and hostility, you have to keep it as tight as possible. The language must be very tight, must be very precise. And when I looked over the declaration, I did not see that. The language that was used, particularly the language in Article 9, stood out to me because it did invite some concerns. Dr. Hinds, could you confirm that you're hearing me still?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
So when you look at that agreement, the first thing that stood out to me was the territory in dispute. And I had a difficulty with that language because as far as Guyanese are concerned, there's no territory in dispute. Essequibo belongs to Guyana. There's no territory in dispute. And for me, it was unacceptable that in the second to last line of the first paragraph, we talk about the territory in dispute. Now you go through the body of the declaration, and we'll come to those things because they are all matters that have been dealt with in more than one way, in one way or the other for the last few months, and we'll come to that. But what stood out to me was the complete lack of necessity for paragraph 9 of that agreement. And not only was it unnecessary, it is what I call the Trojan horse in that agreement, because it is couched in seemingly harmless language. But when you look at that paragraph, what it talks about is the meeting on matters with implications for the territory in dispute. And the first question that came to my mind is, well, what would such a matter be? What would the matter be for, now that you have admitted this to being a territory in dispute, what would that matter possibly be? And then you see where the language used opens the door to so much, because like I pointed out in the letter, for example, the other side could understandably argue that granting a mining license next week is a matter with implications for the disputed territory. If the government decides to grant a mining license in Essequibo, they have a perfectly proper contention in that, because the language used admitted that contention. Do you see my point? And so in putting in that unnecessary paragraph, I fear that we have opened Guyana to having to, as it were, consult on the development of our Essequibo. And, you know, one of the things that we have been at pains to point out is, And you will hear it. You will hear it from the government technical people. You will hear it from the government. You'll hear it from the opposition. That as far as Guyana is concerned, there is no dispute. There is a controversy. There's a controversy because our standing position is that this territory is not in dispute. The 1899 Arbitral Award was full, perfect, and final. And so there is no territory in dispute. Now, mind you, the reason that Essequibo cannot be in dispute, Doc, is because prior to 1899, the lands vested in then British Guyana far exceeded what we have now. Venezuela has never had possession, real, imagined, or any such thing of Essequibo. Possession of Essequibo has always rested with British Guyana and then Guyana. And so it is quite foolhardy for us to label this a dispute, because you will recall that British Guyana then was at least twice the size of what Guyana is now. And so Venezuela has never occupied Essequibo. They have never been legally vested with the how do we say, administration of this region, and then it was wrested from them. They never had it.
Amanza, you have made the point there that if you get one thing wrong, it could have implications for a number of things. If you start out by saying this is a dispute, then that logic takes you to places.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It should have been corrected since Rav Gonzalez's letter. It should have been corrected since then.
And I don't want you to put on, because you wear some different hats here, they're all complimentary, but I want you to put on your political hat. Mm-hmm. It was in Ralph's letter. Everybody created a stink about it, including the president. But our president, God bless him, because for the first time I feel a little sympathy for the brother. He went there and he signed a declaration with the very thing inside.
And therein lies the problem. You see, there were some bare minimum things that I had hoped that we would come away with from this. One, a restatement of the interim order of the court ought to have been there. If you notice, the two contentions are what the parties have held on to going into the ICJ. It is not countenance that there has been an interim relief, as it were, or interim orders granted. And so at the bare minimum, Irfan Ali should not have left that table without having a reference to the fact that the court has said that Venezuela is to do nothing to disrupt the status quo and to interfere with Guyana's control and authority over the Essequibo. It does not even countenance. If you read that, you have no idea that there is such a proclamation from the International Court of Justice.
Let me take you down that road, because the absence of that interim relief from the court, the absence of a clause in itself that entrenches the ICJ process as part of the declaration, the absence of that means that you accept Venezuela's position that the ICJ has no jurisdiction.
Not necessarily. I'll tell you what the absence of it means in my view. The absence of it, it could be argued, and it is quite a laborious argument to make, and it is an argument that we would not have had to make had we had the reference to the ICJ and the interim relief reference in that declaration. But it could be argued that the ICJ process is as a result of that Geneva Agreement.
Right. Yes.
And so it is a long way around to get to the same end. What good negotiators do is that they make sure that they obtain the best possible results for the for their interests. And so the government of Guyana ought to have gone there to obtain the best possible results for Guyana. I will say this: I am happy that the statement and the declaration has a commitment to the use of a commitment to nonviolence, etc. But as we have pointed out, the leader of the opposition pointed this out in the National Assembly when he called out Prime Minister Mia Mottley. Guyana is not the aggressor. Guyana is not the aggressor. And so for us to commit not to use force against each other supposes that there is an intention on the part of Guyana to so do. There has never been, and we have declared that manifestly. We are a peaceful people. And so we have always been committed to diplomacy and to the peaceful resolution of these issues. So that has to be made very clear. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that there is a commitment to de-escalating. Now, all of these features being here in that agreement is why it concerned me as to why we needed to put in Article 9. We did not need to do it. We had no need to do it, rather. We had no need to put that in there, because if you read that closely, and I read it with my drafter's eyes, any matter with implications for the territory in dispute, it ought not to have been there. It should have been any matter that would arise as it relates to the declaration, making the declaration a self-contained document. The way it is drafted right now, it runs the risk of giving Venezuela's case legs far beyond the conclusion of the matter of the ICJ.
That's precisely my point. That's precisely my point, Amanza. And I don't want to get you in trouble, and I don't, because you don't need trouble. But you cannot convince me that Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, me Mottley, who are lawyers, Ralph taught law at UWI for years. You cannot convince me that was put in there by accident. You cannot convince me, with all the technical people there, that was put in there by accident. And so therefore I am arguing that this must go beyond drafting to know politics. Because law in itself has some political implications. And so it is the politics that I am looking at, a politics that I think endangers Guyana, because it is taking us to a place way back to 1966. Because it seems that everything that we have done from 1966, if you read that agreement carefully, that declaration carefully, it is taking us back to 1966 with the Geneva Agreement. And I think that is what the Venezuelans wanted. The way that you have read correctly, that the ICJ process came out of the Geneva Agreement, I do not think that Venezuela is reading that way. Venezuela is saying the Geneva Agreement is separate from in fact, the ICJ, they're arguing, has no jurisdiction on the matter.
And that is true. And they have said that. I'm agreeing with you that is their view, that it is separate and apart. Our view is that it is inextricably bound up. Yes. I want to say something as it relates to the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. They're accountable to their people. Mm-hmm. Irfan Ali and the government of Guyana are accountable to us.
Yeah.
They are accountable to us. And therefore, we have to spend our energy and time making sure that they understand that they are accountable. those people have their interests to pursue. It is our government that has to pursue and secure our interests. In other words, as the young people will say, they will do what they have to do. We have to do what we have to do. And we have failed to do it. And, whilst I know a lot of people say, they should not have met in the first place, etc., that is something that you have to usually be very cautious with. Because, like I said, neighbors must talk. You cannot exist in a political space and shun the opportunity for dialogue. What you have to do is make sure that you are going into dialogue with a very clear understanding of what we will be dialoguing about. Because if you recall, they said we will not discuss Guyana's case before the ICJ. It appears as though there was nothing but that discussed.
There could have been nothing else to discuss but that.
So that is the first point. You have to, when you're going into these types of negotiations, have an idea of the agenda. Now, these summits such as these, based on my experience in the international arena, they are preceded by meetings at the technical levels. And so by the time it reaches to the summit, which is what is called the summit, you have a clearly defined agenda.
Yes.
You have the positions of each other have been fleshed out as far as possible. So at the time of the summit, it is simply to clinch those areas that there is some concern about. But you going into a negotiation with your positions so far apart and without any apparent technical work being done in advance, that I'm not surprised that this is the result. We said as the opposition, if you're going to go meet, you have to have an agenda. We must know what it is that we're going to talk about. And then you come out with the half-baked document that we see. But you know what my concern is, Doc? My concern is that we as Guyanese must understand that we have to hold our government accountable to a certain standard of conduct. It bothers me when I see people making excuses for the government coming away from the table with this type of agreement. It has implications for the life of every Guyanese. And so we have to understand what is happening, and we have to begin to demand that this government act right by the people of Guyana.
Amanza, I love you all, members of parliament and so on. I just hold back my fire a lot, but sometimes I just fire off. But it came to my knowledge that the leader of the opposition was invited to go on this delegation. And he said, no, there's no clear agenda, I ain't going. And I think positions like those, the media didn't make a big noise about it. Only the Stabrook News carried it. I don't think I saw the other papers, not the Kaitro News, I didn't see it. But I think something like that should have been front page. And I think Aubrey Norton and your team should be applauded, because there are times when you all mess up, you all just get beat up. And when you all are correct, I think you all should be applauded. And I want to applaud you all for taking a principled position. Norton could have decided, look, I'm going there. And, I'm going to be in the limelight. And the cameras are going to be on me. But he decided on principle that you all can't tell me what is the agenda. I'm not going to be going there to be used as some kind of prop. And then he would have been responsible. You all would have been responsible for this flawed document that come out. So I just want to applaud you all for that. And you don't have to comment on it. I just want to go on record in your presence, applauding you all for this. But I want to take you all back. The APNU AFC has called for a joint national effort I think you all have bent over backwards. You all have literally, in Guyanese parlance, begged the government to think. I saw you on the program taking the Freddie Kissoon program, taking what I call a stateswoman-like position, in spite of all the haranguing and so on, that you all have taken a position that we must have a national response. How disappointed you all are that this government, in spite of all the pleadings, has decided in a very stubborn way not to take you all on.
Quite disappointed. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, so it's extremely disappointing because this is something that you need a true national effort for. But I have figured out why they do not want to.
Tell me.
Doc, you see, if we could collaborate on matters of our sovereignty and our territorial integrity, we could collaborate for better governance of this country. Mm-hmm. We could collaborate to deliver a better standard of living for Guyanese. Guyanese will see that it is entirely possible for us to have a departure from this rank, rabid level of and type of politics that we have, and have a truly national approach to governing, where if the opposition comes with a position that makes sense, that the government is mature enough to say, you know what, that makes sense, we could implement that. And where the opposition, if the government takes a position that makes sense, could say, you know what, we can support that. We may tweak it like this or consider that, but we can support that. The PPPC is deathly afraid of that type of dialogue and maturity in government. They thrive on the rabidness and the nastiness and the type of vitriol that we see characterizing our politics. And so they will not want the people of Guyana to see real unity on one issue, because the people will realize that if we can unite on this, we can unite on so many other things. And they will begin to hold the government accountable for the quality of the political discourse, for the level and quality of the political interaction. And so this is why it was so petty that they would prevent me from going into schools to speak to children on this controversy. It was so petty that you would say to them, oh, there must be written approval, etc. It is so petty that as a member of parliament, the Ministry of Education had a problem with me going to deliver the feature address at my alma mater. And when you speak about it, Doc, you know what they're saying? Oh, we have to be united, and using this pretense at unity to silence us. Well, like I said at Saybrook Market Square the other night, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. You are not going to use this to do that. And you know, the other issue that I see developing here, Doc, they are coming out with a narrative. I don't know if you've noticed it, that 80% of the people in Guyana are Guyanese returning home. Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard them with that. And go because that's where I was going next, because I know that is an issue that is there and close to you, and you've been speaking out on it. The question of those, yes,
absolutely, yes, absolutely. Now there are about 20 million Venezuelans, or 10 million. I can't remember if it's 10 or 20 million Venezuelans dispersed around the world as a result of what is happening at home.
Yes.
Now, in other countries, they go for the USA, for example, they have to be registered. They have to provide forwarded addresses, and there's a legal process that they must go through so that their movements are accounted for. Why aren't they going through that in Guyana? Why is it that this government believes that they could make us feel bad for requiring them to have a due process for the registration of migrants, a process that works? And I'm saying that it isn't working because of what Robeson Ben said the other day in Parliament when we asked them, have you advertised to these people that they need to come in, they need to be registered so that they can be issued with documentation? Is there a requirement that should they seek employment that they are required, as would any migrant be in any other country? They're required to produce some kind of documentation. There's none of that. And they do not want us to ask questions because they want to label us with the label of being xenophobic. Well, we're not having it. Guyanese people are smart, and we can understand when we are being manipulated. And the PPPC is trying to manipulate us, because I've been saying it from 2021, ever since they amended the Registration of Births and Deaths Act. I have been saying it, that our nation's security could well be undermined from within. We are worried about the Venezuela and the use of force, but there's a far more insidious threat that could be realized without one shot being fired. And that is the threat that the government is not addressing.
And that is the occupation. Venezuelan nationals occupying our territory there in Essequibo. We have that model in the Palestine, where the Israelis have these settlers, and we could well be having a situation where the Venezuelan tactic is to have Venezuelans occupy the territory. Comment on that, please.
Look, there are examples all over the world. You have between, let's say, 8 to 10 million Venezuelan refugees dispersed throughout the world. Now, when you look at what happened in Finland recently, and I cited this in the National Assembly, Finland closed its borders with Ukraine. With the Ukraine. Closed its borders because they were concerned about what they called a soft invasion. In fact, they deemed it a hybrid operation.
Mm-hmm.
That could occasion a soft invasion of their country. That is the deliberate flooding of displaced persons into their country. And they closed the borders. We saw it with Crimea some years ago. And so there are examples that are rife. And you have heard from this government that they have concerns about security. And then they want us to pretend like they never said that. And suddenly now 80% of the people are coming from home. Finland closed their borders with Russia. They did that for a reason. They did that for a reason, because they're cognizant of the fact that they have to protect their internal interests. And our government is failing to do that. And when you speak about it, they want to label you xenophobic, and then you're promoting, xenophobia. And it is quite unfortunate, because when you look down the line, you can see what it means for Guyana, Doc. You'll recall that I said in the Parliament, when they amended this Registration of Births and Deaths Act to provide that a Toshao or a JP could sign an affidavit, and that affidavit entitles you to be given a Guyanese late registration. That is a birth certificate that now entitles you to be entered into our voters list. It is entirely possible that within 10 years, there could be so many people deliberately sent here to infiltrate our political system, get elected onto our NDCs, get elected onto our RDCs, get elected into our National Assembly. And then what do we do when that eventuality occurs? But I am willing to be the voice of the one in the wilderness crying, because I could see it coming. I could see it coming. And before God, I will be happy that I would have done my part and sounded the alarm and raised my voice and warned that this is an imminent threat.
Amanza, your supporters would want you to go beyond sounding the alarm, and they hope a day will not come to that we'll have to say we told you so, that we have to find ways and means of blocking, stopping these things. And it is in that spirit that I want to ask you this question. The government has said in no uncertain terms, both in word and in deed, that we are taking you all on with no national front, no all-party front, and all of that stuff. So what does the opposition do? What do you do? What do you do in the absence of the government forming a national initiative that includes you in an active way? What do you do as an opposition?
Mobilize to get them out of government. My view on it is very simple, and this is Amanza's view. Mm-hmm. We have to understand as a nation that, and I speak now as a Guyanese, I have the power of a vote, and I don't have to take it. We have labored under the yoke in Guyana for too long of saying, oh, I got to do this, and if I'm mistreated by this government, is my government, is my party, and I have to take it. No, I don't. I have a policy that if you are my friend, I hold you to a higher standard. And Guyanese must begin to hold their politicians, their political parties, us as their representatives, to a higher standard. Dr. Hinds, you don't know how it pains me to see the golden arrowhead painted on the ground.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, you're making a fuss about nothing. But there is not I recall as a little girl, I grew up with a military father. And I recall summers you are on Campa in Ghana. And at 6 o'clock when the bugle blows for that flag to come down, you're playing, you had to stop. And you had to stand to attention. Because that was the flag coming down. 6 o'clock in the morning, the same thing. Because it was the flag, it meant something. It is the thing for which men would lay their lives down and women would go to war for. And we have it painted on the ground. And when you make that observation, oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, but we don't understand that it is those very simple acts that contribute to the erosion of the national spirit, of the spirit of patriotism. Look at how hard the Venezuelans are going for what they believe there. And we are still making excuses for a government that does not understand that patriotism is not a 2-month stint of national activities or the waving of a flag or the forming of the map of Guyana. It is a sustained, inculcated lifestyle. And that is what we have to begin to do in Guyana once again. We had it in the 80s when I went to primary school. We had to sing the national songs. We had to every Monday and Friday, and that engendered something in you. It made you understand that, this is what we have. Some of us came, some were brought, but we are here, and this is what we have. And so, you sing, I care not that other rave of our fair lands afar, where silvern lakes and plastic stream, mere the evening star, and those things did something to the human spirit, and it lit a flame of patriotism.
You mentioned
Guyana, sustained us and made us able to punch above our weight class in the diplomatic arena.
You mentioned speaking the other night at the Stabroek Market Square, which means that you all are on the road. What are you all telling those audiences?
Look, we have been focusing on the same issue of Venezuela because it is an existential threat. We agree. Both the opposition and the government agrees that we both agree that this is an existential threat. And therefore you had hoped to see some level of collaboration, meaningful levels of collaboration. Not sending T-shirts and sending invitations, but meaningful levels of collaboration. We have called for the establishment of a border commission because we represent 49% of the Guyanese citizenry. And we therefore need to be in the room where key decisions are being taken that will affect the future of this country, particularly as it relates to our sovereignty and our territorial integrity. So we have been going around and we will continue. And I want folks to look out because they will see that we will be out there speaking to the people about what our views are on this, about what we will do differently and how we would handle this differently. And again, mobilizing to make sure that this government is removed. It is unbelievable that in the time of such plenty, you are giving our public servants 6.5% increase in salaries when you are drawing money down from the consolidated fund, from the natural resources fund, like you've never done before. And now we are learning GPL doesn't have money. Suco doesn't have money. Where is this money going? 20 billion here, 100 billion there from the natural resources fund. Where is this money going? It is certainly not to the ordinary Guyanese. And I want Guyanese under the sound of my voice to hear me. You do not have to take this. You are entitled. You are entitled to a better standard of living. You are entitled to a better way of life. We have fought, we have struggled for the last 50-something years. And finally, when this nation has the opportunity to breathe, Dr. Hinds, you have men and women in the PPP that would actively deny. I heard Barry Jagdeo on his Thursday rant trying to justify a 6.5% increase. He's basically telling Guyanese, that is good enough for you. Make it do. Meanwhile, he lives off of the taxpayers' money. He does not pay a single bill. It is all off of the backs of taxpayers. And I hope that we become awoken enough to understand that we have to do something about it and we don't have to take it.
You don't have to say it, but I am going to say it. It's not Guyanese, it's just simply Guyanese. The way this government has treated the Public Service Union, the GTU, is not the same way it treats GAU and NASI. I've said on this program before that I don't think Coretta McDonald and the GTU and Patrick Yard and the PSU will quarrel too much if they'd given the teachers and the public servants workers $250,000 cash grant. They will say, yes, we know you didn't consult us. You didn't bargain with us. But if you give the teachers and the public servants $250,000, we can take it. I don't think they will argue. I think we have to be very clear about what this government is doing. This government is dividing our nation. Our nation has its own problems of divisions, give more history, and so on. What this government is doing is exacerbating it. They're exacerbating the divisions by pitting one group against the other, by one action for one group, another for another group. Look, if I were this government, at the time when I'm asking soldiers to go on the front line to fight for Guyana, basically asking them to go and sacrifice your life for Guyana, I would be giving their mothers and their sisters and their daughters what they ask for in terms of a living wage, because the people in the public service and them teachers are them soldiers' mothers and sisters and daughters. And that this government cannot see that, says where this government is and where it wants to take this country. And I think we have to take a strong, strong stand against that, because that is the cancer, that if we put them out of power and we take power, we will be inheriting something that is so cancerous that we would have a difficult time getting rid of it. So I think that is something that ought to be confronted. We have to call them out. I know 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you tried to call them out and they tried to lynch you. But, you know, sometimes that's the sacrifice one has to make by calling them. I'm going to ask you a question here. I had people in this program who reminded us that our army in the 60s and the 70s used to be one of the best army in Latin America. The Caribbean didn't have armies. That when it comes to jungle warfare, we were one of the best in the world. So our army had stripes. It had. And we have noticed that our army has been reduced to just a mediocre force. What Venezuela has done is that it has exposed that weakness in the army. Is it time for us to weaponize our armed forces in terms of having a military strategy and spending some of that money in giving our army the kind of weaponry that they use? Now, I'm saying that cognizant of the fact that our ethnic divide makes this government leery, hesitant to do that, because they may think that, oh my goodness, these people in the army come from a constituency that is not our natural electoral constituency. And in a sense, we are putting arms in their hand. I hear that, and I'm sensitive to that. But do you believe that in spite of that, that we have come to the point where we have no choice than to spend money and to weaponize our army? And we
agree.
Yes,
we agree. We have called for the resourcing of our national defense mechanism, the infrastructure. It has to be upgraded. Like I said, we are in the big leagues now, and we have to operate as such. And the Guyana Defense Force has had a proud history, rich legacy. It's one of the points of pride that I am a military kid. You know, my father was a military officer, and so I share in the pride of what our servicemen and women do, and they deserve nothing less but our best, nothing less than our best. They deserve. We have a duty to resource, to equip the military. We have a duty to treat our servicemen and women with the respect and regard it is deserving of people who get up every day with a view of putting their life on the line for this nation. It should be reflected in their salaries. It should be reflected in the level of equipment that they are provided. It should be reflected in just the way that they are treated. Look, we have just lost 5 servicemen. Irreplaceable loss. And, you know, these things remind us ever so often of the grave responsibility that we have. We must. The leader of the opposition has said it very clearly that we have to spend money on our defense capabilities. We are small. We are a small nation numerically, but we have to do what we must to upgrade the capability of our defense force, coupled with investing in our diplomatic infrastructure. My goodness, Guyana enjoyed some of the best diplomats across the international arena in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. Ashley Jackson, Sir Sridhar Ramphal, to name a few. We have Carl Greenidge, who is still with us. You know, some giants in the field, but they just didn't happen. They were nurtured, they were mentored, they were tutored. There was a deliberate effort to build capacity in our diplomats. But now what you see is the politicization of our diplomatic core. And whilst, yes, politics will play a role, at the end of the day, when you are out there as a diplomat, you are a representative of the government and people of Guyana, not a political party. And so this tendency to put people who are party friendly, or who, they believe that they can control, and reducing diplomatic postings to rewards for services rendered, etc., is debilitating our diplomatic response. And we have to therefore shore up and strengthen the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So it has to be a two-pronged strategy, a three-pronged strategy. The third prong of the strategy is for us to begin to deliberately and diligently inculcate the spirit of patriotism in our people. And it is a symbiotic relationship. As the government demonstrates that it honors, it respects, and it cherishes its people, the people in turn will honor, respect, and cherish their flag, honor, respect, and cherish their nation. So,
Yeah, Amanza,
my 2 cents.
I wanted to come back on this program, and I don't want to put you in a position to alienate you from that. But I have to ask you. I have to ask you some questions. I heard you just now that we have to instill patriotism. You are, they're saying it on this program, and I've heard it everywhere I go. Amanza, she's a bright girl. And when Guyanese say you're bright, you know they mean more than just, to read and write and so on. That is not a thing. That is not, when Guyanese tell you you're bright, that is not a thing that is given any and everybody. They're very selective. No, you must know that patriotism is wrapped up with our ethnic condition. That we have had the PPP, and you try to say that, and they've tried to lynch you. We've had the PPP for decades, and I can say it because they can't lynch me. PPP for decades, which has socialized its supporters to see certain state institutions, such as the army and the police, as their ethnic enemies. There was a time when the PPP socialized supporters not to stand up when the national anthem was playing. And I'm saying these things because when the government changed, I never saw the PNC encouraging their supporters not to stand up when the national anthem is playing. Over decades, the PPP supporters have been socialized by their party to see certain state institutions in a demonic way. Here we are, for example, where we have an army is plain to see. For historical reasons, but also for sociological reasons, we have an army of mostly people of one ethnic group. And at a time when the enemy is trying to do all kinds of things to us, there are questions which you must hear because you just walk. You just walk, you must hear questions. Why must we fight for Guyana when we are not getting as much as others out of Guyana? Is it time for us to come up with a national policy to ethnically diverse our armed forces? Amanza, Walton-Desir, don't dodge this question. If you get in trouble, I got, how much? 1,400 and odd people here tonight, ready to defend you tonight here, and a whole army of others ready to defend. Is it time for us to have a clear policy of diversifying our armed forces?
I will answer it this way. The Constitution of Guyana says that it is the duty of every citizen to defend this country. Mm-hmm. That is stated in our Constitution. And so for me, even though I am not in the armed forces, I have a duty to defend this nation. I will also say that patriotism is something that is inculcated. I will say as well, and I'm bringing many strands together to make a point, we have had the opportunity to see the bitter fruit that particular actions have yielded. And as a nation, as a people, at the level of the individual, we now have the ability to choose. Because I will say this, I don't think that there has to be a policy to do that. I think that once we begin to do what we must do for the people of this country, we will see people raising their hands. Now, I will say this as well. And like I said, I'm bringing many pieces together. I recall as a young girl hearing stories of national service. And we see today the results of no longer having the national service, whether it was good, whether it was bad. We are seeing the results today because what you have is an adversary on your western border that requires that every citizen of a particular age should undergo conscription, i.e., they have to serve in the military or paramilitary. And so they're trained in a particular way with the intention of building citizens that are able to defend their country. We discontinued that in Guyana for whatever the ideological reasons were. And so what you have now are Guyanese citizens who, if the worst comes to the worst, do not have the basic training to be useful in conflict situations in terms of actively defending or operating in conflict scenarios. And so we're seeing the results of the type of neglect of national priorities. So I think that once we begin to have Guyanese, every Guyanese, irrespective of their ethnicity, feel that they are a part of this nation, that they have a stake in this nation, it is only natural, I believe, that you will see people rising to defend their country. I am optimistic because traveling through the length and breadth of Guyana as we have been, you are seeing the kindling of the flames of patriotism. It is for us now to sustain that. It is for us to sustain that spirit. You know, I saw when Irfan Ali was going to St. Vincent, he received well wishes from across the political divide. If we nurture that thing, that part of us that deeply understands that at the end of the day, we either live together as brothers or perish together as fools, then I think, Dr. Hinds, there is hope for us. I think there is hope.
I think we have lost Amanza there for a minute. That insult to our women is something that we have to take a stand against. We have lost Amanza. I hope she comes back in because I want her to deal with this question. The question as a woman, as an African woman, being every time she goes in a program, the first thing they begin to talk about how beautiful she is and so on. This whole notion of our women being sex symbols rather than being women with brains and the capacity to think and analyze things. That's not where they go. And then the other one referring to Mrs. Hughes as a lowlife. I think that level of disrespect from people on the other side of the political aisle to our women has to stop. We have lost Amanza. But I think we are satisfied that she was able to add to the conversation tonight and to bring some perspectives to, oh, here she is. Here she is. She's back. Amanza, I just wanted you to comment on that assault on Mrs. Hughes and how you feel when you sit down in certain fora that those men, the first thing they go to is how beautiful you are. Well, we all know that. We all see that. But I am bring you here for your nice face, as old people would say, right? For your good looks. You're here because you got something behind your ears, as old people would say, something inside there. Anyhow, your comments.
Doc, I'm no longer surprised at the descent into the banal that we're seeing. I mean, for Barjagdio to refer to any woman as low life is unacceptable. He is who he is. You know what bothers me? The silence of the people.
Yes.
Who, if Amanza says something, everybody has an opinion. The convenient outrage, the hypocrisy is what concerns me. I have a stated position. If you don't speak on certain things, when you speak on certain things, I have no time with you. And I am unapologetic for it now. Because we have to call people out for the nonsense that they do. I mean, as a woman in politics, I face microaggressions every day. And I said it on the press conference and I will repeat it here. How I look, the way I dress, has nothing or should not in any civilized or developed society have anything to do with anything. But when you promote microaggressions, who just want to dress up, who take it up with God. Nothing I can do about this.
Right.
But when you make those statements, you facilitate the atmosphere that invites the type of disrespect that men like Barjagdio believe that they could mete out to women like myself and Catherine Hughes. And so, even people who may be our supporters have to check themselves to see if some of the things that they say about us as women don't allow Barjagdio to feel that he could take his eyes to pass us. But he's not going to take his eyes to pass me. And I'm happy to see that my colleague Cathy Hughes is taking the necessary actions to deal with this matter, because it is time that we stand up for these, Dr. Hinds, we are losing women every day. Women are being slaughtered. They're being kicked about. And you have men who enjoy positions of power. But you know why they can do it? They do it because they know that there are people who will rush to their defense. And I say that without apology. They know that it doesn't matter how nasty they get. There are people who will support them in that nastiness. But the minute we become a people here in Guyana that says, no, you have gone too far, we are not supporting that. You will see changed behavior, but we keep rewarding bad behavior. And we are descending into this morass. And the only people that will get us out is us. Dr. Hinds, I keep saying, nobody coming to save us as Guyanese. Our salvation is with us. We have to stand up and save ourselves. We have to stand up and fight for the nation that we want, because I guarantee you that when the descent intensifies. Those, as Buju Banton said, who can afford to run will run. But what about those who can't? They will have to stay.
They will
And
have to
so,
stay. Yeah.
and so I intend to continue to speak up, to continue to use the talents that God has given me to contribute some way positively to the growth and development of this nation. It is the least that I can do.
Amanza Walton-Desir, one of the early pioneers of this program. She has been a little bit scarce in recent times, but don't blame her for that. Blame me. Blame me, because I ultimately have to make the call. Amanza, I hope you don't stay away for as long as you've stayed away. If there is any time, anything you want to comment on and you feel that you need a platform, please call me. Please call me. I get a little old these days, and always always remember my friends when I should remember them. But it's good to have you on tonight. And
Thank you. It was certainly a joy, and it's always a pleasure for me to be able to sit with you and to discuss matters of national development. I know that you love Guyana, and it is that love that sometimes allows you to take some unpopular and hard positions. But sometimes we have to maybe take some unpopular positions. I'm always reminded that those who God loves, He corrects and He chastens. And so correcting and insisting that things be done a certain way is an indication of love and care, actually. We're not taught that. We're taught that to sit silently and condone nonsense is the way that you show appreciation, but actually it is correction and insisting that things be done, a certain way. And so I really want to thank you for asking me to come on. I'll not be a stranger as long as I'm here and I'm invited. And I can. I'll be happy to. To speak with you anytime.
thank you very much, Amanza. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Amanza Walton-Desir, one of the rising new leaders in the opposition benches, here tonight, giving us our view and our perspectives. Good evening to all of you. Commissioner Cole, I notice you've been very active these last few days, and it's always good to have a perspective. ENRE Perry Mason. You all see the band on the bottom of the screen there. It's our end of year fund drive. We're asking you all to contribute whatever you all can contribute to Politics 101 so that we can take care of some incidentals. We have some responsibilities that we have to take care of on this program. The program is broadcast here, but it's also broadcast on broadcast television in Guyana. For those older folks who can't come on to the media, they look forward to seeing the program on Saturdays and Sundays on Channel 9, and we want to keep that going. So we welcome your contributions. As I always say, we have to get into the habit of supporting our own causes. Whether it's we don't mind how much you contribute. You contribute based on what you can afford. So that there's some people we want to thank. We want to thank Novella. We want to thank Desiree. We want to thank Yahweh. We want to thank Peter. We want to thank Joycelyn. I think Shelley is the other person we want to thank, and we hope that others will come through. We are moving into the weekend, but we'll be back on Monday. This weekend, they've reminded me that Sunday is my, birthday. I'm a December man, Sagittarian, so Sunday is my birthday. So I'll take the weekend and chill for a little, but we're going to be back on Monday. And yes, if you want to give a birthday gift, gifted to Politics 101. Politics 101. Please contribute to keeping our program on. I thank you all so much. I love you all, and continue to serve in this capacity as we continue to wind our way towards the other side, the other side, the other side. Thank you all so much. Dr. Vince Adams, who's usually our Friday man, he's still in Guyana, as you know. The soldier who died, one of them, Mr. Charles, is a close relative, and he is in Guyana for the funeral. And so he will be back next week. But I thank you all so much for the birthday wishes. Thank you all so much for the birthday wishes. I'm not usually a birthday man. You know, when you're born so close to Christmas, you know, they had to make, poor people had to make a choice, you know, you're going to give a Christmas present or a birthday present. And ultimately, it used to be the birthday present. The Christmas present, no birthday present. So there was not very much fuss around birthday. And I have grown up into an adult with that habit of not thinking much about birthday, but people remind me that yes, I was born, and thank you all for the birthday wishes, and thank you all in advance for those of you who contribute to Politics 101. See you all on Monday. It's home stretch because next week is the week before Christmas. We're going to be out and about, and in spite of Venezuela, let's do Christmas. Let's do Christmas. Because as the trade wind says, what? It is traditional. It is traditional. So let's do it. I'm going to see you all on Monday, and I'll take a little drink. I'll take a little drink on Sunday, a little birthday drink on Sunday for all of us. And I hope you all take a little toast for me. Until Monday, you all be good, and stay with the struggle.